Hey YouTube, how's it going? 60 degrees here, December 25th. Not a bad temperature. I wish it was this way all year round. So this week's portion is Shemot, and that stands for names, and it covers Genesis 1:1 through 6:1. As an overview, we have a new king in Egypt that doesn't know Joseph, therefore doesn't recognize, his achievements in saving Israel, in saving Egypt. We have the birth of Moses, or Moshe. Moshe's flight to Midian. Then we have Elohim sends Moshe back to Egypt. Then we have Elohim gives power to Moshe to show the Hebrew signs. The staff turns into a snake and his hand becomes leprous, and then he can make blood out of the water of the Nile. Then we have Moshe going back to Midian for his wife, for his family. Then we have finally Elohim promises to deliver Israel. And I'd like to comment on the incident that preceded Moshe's flight to Egypt. And that's in Exodus 2:11 through 15, and I'll read that. And it came to pass in those days, when Moshe was grown, that he went out unto his brethren, and looked on their burdens, and he spied an Egyptian smiting an Hebrew, one of his brethren. And he looked this way and that way, and when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid in the sand. And when he went out the second day, behold, two men of the Hebrews strove together, and he said to him that did the wrong, Wherefore smitest thou thy fellow? And he said, Who made thee a prince and a judge over us? Intendest thou to kill me as thou killest the Egyptian? And Moshe feared and said, Surely this thing is known. Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moshe. But Moshe fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. So there's Moses. Moshe, he was raised from the time he's 3 months old in the household of the Pharaoh, and then he ends up having to run to Midian. So I would like to look at this story in a little more depth in another place in the Bible, and that's Acts 7:22 through 29. So I'll just read through here real quick, and we'll comment on the verses. And Moshe was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and was mighty in words and in deeds. Oh, and here's the deal. This is Stephen talking, and he's on trial for blasphemy, and of course this ends with him being stoned. So, and he's recounting the history of the Hebrews. So 7:22 through 29, verse 22. And Moshe was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and was mighty in words and in deeds. And when he was full 40 years old, he came into his heart to visit his brethren, the children of Israel. And seeing one of them suffer wrong, he defended him, and avenged him that was oppressed, and smote the Egyptian. For he supposed his brethren would have understood how Elohim by his hand would deliver them, but they understood not. And the next day he showed himself unto them as they strove, and would have set them at one again, saying, Sirs, ye are brethren, why do you wrong one another? But he that did his neighbor wrong thrust him, saying, Who made thee a ruler and a judge over us? Wilt thou kill me as thou didst the Egyptian yesterday? Then fled Moshe at this saying, and was a stranger in the land of Midian, where he begat 2 sons. So let's look at these. Seems like there's a little more detail here, drilling down. Verse 22, And Moshe was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and was mighty in words and in deeds. So if you read part of the Apocrypha, it says he was even a mighty general. So So this is a really smart guy, and he had all that Egypt had to offer when it comes to um, school. And when he was full 40 years old, it came into his heart to visit his brethren of Israel. So, Elohim was already working on Moshe's heart. He knew these were his people, and they were in servitude and suffering. Verse 24, and seeing one of them suffer wrong, he defended him and avenged him that was oppressed, and smote the Egyptian. For he supposed his brethren would have understood how that Elohim by his hand would deliver him, but they understood not. So, number one, he, in the Genesis account, he looks this way, he looks that way, and then kills the Egyptian. So there wasn't anybody there. So was there someone hiding there, or would this be paranormal? The way that and these two guys, according to the rabbis, it was Abiram and Dathan, who later, are killed by the father. They were contentious anyhow. But I don't. That's extra biblical. So I don't know if that's true or not. But so he may have been thinking about delivering his people at that time, maybe having, maybe holding an uprising or whatever. But we know it didn't happen. Verse 26, and the next day he showed himself unto them as they strove, and would have set them at one again, saying, Sirs, ye are brethren, why do ye wrong one another? So what's worse than seeing your brothers who are an oppressed people, in severe bondage, and having to work so hard, and then they're fighting amongst each other on top of that. So 27, but he that did his neighbor wrong thrust him, pushed Moshe away, and says, Who made thee a ruler and a judge over us? Well, who else said something like that? It was, at least it seems like to me, Jacob, whenever Laban accused him of stealing his idol, and Rachel, however you want to pronounce that, had stolen it, and of course Jacob didn't know about it, and he says, let whoever has that idol, if it's found, be killed. So Rachel dies not that long after that. So you got to be careful what you speak. Words are powerful. By Jacob pronouncing what he did, was that a death sentence on Rachel? Yeah. Some people think so. I don't know. So here he's saying, Who made thee a ruler and a judge over us? Well, what does Moshe become? He becomes, if you know the rest of the story, he becomes a ruler and a judge over you. So, he becomes an El, or a god, to Aaron. So, and then a commentator wrote, Under the presence of the want of a call by man, the instruments of Elohim are often rejected. So, maybe this guy should have considered Moshe's words here. I don't think that Moshe was just thrusting himself in to prove something. But when he says, Wilt thou kill me as thou didst the Egyptian yesterday? Then fled Moshe at this saying, and was a stranger in the land of Madian, where he begat 2 sons. So I think there's some good stuff here. Frankly, I had never noticed that was in Moshe's heart, before he went to Midian. So he must have sat over there for 40 years, reflecting on this and thinking about his people. And the Father's putting in his heart and working on him, getting him ready for this big job. But there's some stuff to learn here. I've met people who said they were saved when they're 4 years old, and appear to have had a model life, If that testimony is sincere, I wish I was that person, sincerely. Here we have Moshe thinking that maybe he's the guy to deliver his people, and we got a delay of 40 years, over in Midian. So should he have tried to deliver his people earlier? I don't know. Or, in God's perfect will. Um, and then he would have been allowed to go to Midian in Elohim's permissive will. Like, okay, you've messed up, so now what are you gonna do? But maybe he was supposed to go over there all along. I don't know. The Midianites knew Scripture. So, and when Jethro comes back, his father-in-law comes back after they've left, after they're en route from Egypt, and it appears, to me, it appears that they pretty much worship this, worship alike. So maybe he went. So maybe it was the Father's perfect will that he go to Midian and to learn, true worship of the Father. And 40, is a number of testing. So maybe the Father was testing him for 40 years on learning just that. When Israel went into captivity, they were herdsmen. And when they came out, they had learned all the crafts. They knew how to lay bricks. They had artificers or craftsmen who knew how to build all the things associated with the temple. So maybe in the same way, if this is true, when Moshe went to Midian, maybe the people in bondage, they were learning the trades and learning to become a nation. And so maybe these periods of testing, well, they do. These periods of testing can make better people of us. So I think the larger point here is to be content with where you're at and keep studying the Word, And if you're not studying the Word, get into it. I'm not sure the reason that, you or I don't have more responsibility in the kingdom is indicative of our capacity to do more. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is. Maybe if I was doing everything the way I should, I would just be busier than a 1-hour paper hanger. I don't know. And secondarily, I would say to a lesser extent, the lesson I get from this is to be conscious of what people are doing around me, and to watch what I say. I already alluded to that. Perhaps if the two men in conflict would have had situational awareness, they would have realized Moshe might be a potential deliverer and been in accord with him, whatever that means. And maybe not. Maybe I'm taking too much for granted here. But and I said this before. A gentleman that I really respect told me, if you see somebody doing something strange, like, why would you, a prince in Egypt, care about one of us being killed? But if you see people doing something strange, maybe ask them. Say, why are you doing that? It could be something you should be doing. I don't know. But I hope you have a good week, and let's get a start on this. Get ready to start this new year, this new Roman year. See you later.